My name is James, and I want to share a story about my dog, Max, and how he saved me one night. Max is a loyal German Shepherd, and we've been inseparable since he was a puppy. We have a routine of taking a walk every evening, and that night was no different, or so I thought. It was a clear evening, with a light breeze in the air, as Max and I walked down our usual path near the old cemetery. The moon was bright, and everything seemed peaceful. But Max, usually full of energy and curiosity, was acting differently. He was alert, his ears standing straight up, and he let out a low, unusual growl. "What's up, Max?" I asked, feeling a bit uneasy. Max tugged on his leash, pulling me toward the cemetery gates. I hesitated, but his insistence made me follow. As we walked through the gates, Max's growl turned into a bark. He was clearly trying to warn me about something. I looked around, trying to see what had caught his attention. That's when I noticed a man standing by one of the tombstones, staring at us. He looked lost and confused, and something about him didn't feel right. Max stood between me and the man, barking loudly. "Hello? Do you need help?" I called out, but the man didn't respond. Instead, he started walking toward us, his movements slow and unsteady. Max barked even louder, and I could feel my heart racing. Just as the man got closer, Max lunged forward, pulling me back and breaking my concentration. The man stopped, seemingly startled by Max's aggression. He turned around and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. I stood there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. Max had sensed something was wrong before I did, and he had protected me. I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me as I patted Max on the head. "Good boy, Max. Let's go home." As we walked back home, I couldn't shake the feeling that Max had saved me from something dangerous that night. Since then, I've trusted Max's instincts even more. He's more than just a pet. He's my protector. A few days later, curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to visit the cemetery during the day. I found the tombstone where the man had been standing. It was old and weathered, with a name I didn't recognize. I asked around the neighborhood and learned that the man buried there had died under mysterious circumstances many years ago. Some said his spirits still wandered the cemetery at night. The story sent a shiver down my spine, but it made me appreciate Max even more. That night, he had sensed something beyond my understanding and kept me safe. Max continues to be my loyal companion, always looking out for me. We still take our evening walks, but I steer clear of the cemetery. Max seems more relaxed now, and I trust his instincts implicitly. He's not just my dog, he's my guardian, always watching over me. And so every night as I look at Max curled up by my side, I'm reminded of how he protected me. It's a bond that's grown even stronger, built on trust and a shared experience that neither of us will ever forget.
My name is Mark, and I want to tell you about an experience I had on Mount Everest that changed my life forever. As an avid mountaineer, I've always been drawn to the allure of Everest, the highest peak in the world. Little did I know that my last expedition would take a turn that I could never have anticipated. We started our climb early in the morning, the sun barely peeking over the horizon. The air was crisp and thin, each breath a reminder of the altitude we were facing. Our team consisted of experienced climbers, each of us determined to reach the summit. We made our way through the Khumbu icefall, navigating the treacherous crevasses and towering seracs. As we ascended higher, the weather began to change. Dark clouds rolled in, and the wind picked up, howling through the mountains like a haunting wail. We decided to set up camp for the night, hoping the storm would pass by morning. The temperature dropped significantly, and we huddled together in our tents, trying to stay warm. That night, I had trouble sleeping. The howling wind outside sounded almost like voices, whispering unintelligibly. I chalked it up to my imagination and exhaustion, but a nagging feeling of unease settled in my gut. Around midnight, I heard a faint, eerie sound. It was like someone calling my name. I unzipped my tent and peered outside, my headlamp cutting through the darkness. There, in the distance, I saw a figure standing on the ridge. It was too dark to make out any details, but the figure seemed to be waving at me. I rubbed my eyes, thinking I was seeing things, but the figure remained. My heart pounded in my chest as I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" There was no response, just the relentless wind. I considered waking up my team, but I didn't want to seem paranoid. I decided to investigate on my own, thinking perhaps someone was lost and needed help. I put on my gear and stepped out into the freezing night. As I approached the ridge, the figure seemed to move away, always staying just out of reach. I followed, driven by a strange compulsion. The snow crunched under my boots, and my breath formed icy clouds in the air. Suddenly, I slipped and fell, sliding down a slope and crashing into a snowbank. Dazed, I looked up and realized I was in a part of the mountain I didn't recognize. Panic set in as I tried to get my bearings. The figure was gone, and I was alone in the dark, disoriented and freezing. I fumbled for my radio and called for help, but all I got was static. The wind seemed to whisper my name again, louder this time, almost mocking me. I turned around, desperate to find my way back to camp, when I saw something that made my blood run cold. Footprints in the snow, leading away from me, but they weren't human. They were larger, deeper, and had an odd elongated shape. I followed them, hoping they would lead me back to safety. The footprints led to a small cave, hidden by an overhang of ice. With no other option, I ventured inside. The cave was dark and narrow, but I could see a faint light at the end. As I moved closer, the light grew brighter, revealing carvings on the walls. They depicted scenes of ancient rituals, strange creatures, and climbers from different eras. My heart raced as I realized these were stories of people who had disappeared on Everest over the years. At the end of the cave, I found a small shrine with offerings of old climbing gear, photographs, and personal items. The light emanated from a small, flickering lantern. Suddenly, the whispers grew louder, and I felt a presence behind me. I turned around to see the figure from the ridge, now close enough for me to see its face. It was an old Sherpa, his eyes filled with sorrow. He pointed to the shrine and then to me, as if trying to communicate something important. I was too scared to move, but then he spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "The mountain takes what it wants. Leave an offering, and you may survive." Trembling, I took off my lucky charm, a pendant my father had given me, and placed it on the shrine. The Sherpa nodded and vanished, leaving me alone in the cave. The whispers faded, and I felt a strange sense of calm. I found my way out of the cave and followed the footprints back to camp. When I returned, my team was relieved to see me. They had been searching for me for hours. I told them what had happened, but they were skeptical, thinking it was just a result of exhaustion and altitude sickness. But I knew the truth. Everest is more than just a mountain. It's a living, breathing entity with its own will. It takes what it wants, and sometimes shows mercy. I left a part of myself on that shrine, and in return, I was spared. I still climb, but I'll never forget the shadows on Everest and the night it almost claimed me.